Thank you for joining this webinar on relocation to the UAE. Across the course of the next 60 minutes, we're going to cover all the aspects that high net worth clients need to consider, including visa and migration, options, banking, financial management, financial planning, and education. So across the course of the hour, we're going to cover a huge amount of material. Our questions, comments, and the Q&A is open. So across the course of the hour, we welcome questions and comments from our audience, and I'll bring them live onto our panel of experts as we move through. We're going to get into the details shortly, but I'm just going to come to each of my panelists for a brief introduction and an explanation of how they help clients from the UAE, starting with David Smiley from GSB Capital. Welcome, David.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. As David says, my name is David Smiley. I'm Group Head of GSB Private, which is the private client division of GSB Capital. GSB Capital being a Dubai-founded and headquartered wealth and asset manager. My background, obviously, I'm a Brit. I've been living in the UAE for almost a decade. And throughout this time, I've specialized in advising high net worth and ultra high net worth clients, resident specifically across the GCC and UK. So these are two jurisdictions that I know very well.
Fantastic. And Navin Chakani from Mashreq, welcome to you, sir. Be great to hear a bit more about your business out of Dubai.
Thank you so much, David. Hi, everyone. This is Navin Chokani. So I'm part of the Mashreq Private Banking. Mashreq is the oldest bank in the UAE, and I have been in the UAE for the last 18 years and been a long time resident. And I've seen lots of ups and downs in the UAE. I take care of the private banking proposition, and I'm also heading the external asset manager desk. In my recent role, which is I'm also started handling the international expansion, where my role requires to capture the flow of clients who are moving from UK, Europe, and Chinese region to the UAE. And that's where we have set up the recent team in Hong Kong and UK, who are there to acquire clients from UK. I'll talk more about it later on as we move on to the panel. Thank you so much, David.
Fantastic. Marie O'Neill, good friend of PCD. Great to have you back on this webinar. Be great to hear a little introduction.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, David, for having me join this great panel discussion today. My name is Marie O'Neill. I'm the co-owner and managing director of EOR Middle East. We offer corporate services, immigration and relocation support across the Middle East. I'm based in our head office in Dubai. I've been living in the UAE for the last 18 years, originally from Ireland. We offer services all across the Middle East and basically assist high net worths moving into the region, and particularly Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Amna Nagji from Bennett International. Amna, be great to have an introduction.
Thank you, David. Very excited to be on this panel today. I'm Amna, work with Bennett International Education Consultancy, lived in Dubai for 26 years, pretty much seen the skyline and the schooling landscape evolve over the years, and very excited to talk about how schooling has evolved and the changes in the education space, and to share some insights with the team.
Fantastic. Well, and just to get our conversation underway, David, just coming to you first, we read a lot in the UK about demand for relocation into Dubai. What do you think is driving a lot of relocators that you work with? Do they fit neatly into a box, or do you see lots of different types of clients coming out of both the UK and elsewhere?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been really fascinating to see. I think we'd all agree, those of us who've been here for a while, seeing the interest in the region, seeing the migration, especially since COVID. And look, I think it's a real combination between push and pull factors. I think, if we look at the push factors, you're looking at a tax environment and a sentiment in the UK that's becoming increasingly unfavorable and uncertain, especially to our high net worth and ultra high net worth clients and their families, combined with a fairly gloomy economic outlook, and I think a general kind of reassessment of whether does the UK still fulfil the same lifestyle, security, education, and sort of global access requirements that it maybe once did. And I think that combination of those factors is pushing, and then you combine that with the pull factors, and we know how Dubai has just got those factors right over the last few years. The visa and the long-term residency reforms, the attractiveness of their tax framework, the world-class infrastructure that we can see, an ever-improving regulatory landscape, which I work in, and I've seen it evolve and mature. and of course an environment I think that just supports and breeds success. And I think it's no real surprise when you combine those pull factors with the push factors we're seeing, and as a result, you're seeing this migration. To your second point, no, very, very different people that we're seeing from different backgrounds and different industries. It's a real broad mix. I think that's what makes it so exciting, because it's certainly not a sort of one size fits all. There's a real diverse person that's coming.
Fantastic. And Marie, I know you travel all around the world and deal with companies as well as individuals who are looking to relocate into the UAE. What's your sense of what's appealing to most of those clients you're dealing with, or what's driving the motivation?
Oh. Sorry, I was still on mute. Yeah, look, I think clients coming from the UK, definitely it's a tax for, there are some tax reasons there, but it's not the only reason. A lot of other reasons, safety is a big thing why people move to the UAE. Lifestyle, the current lifestyle that the UAE offers, and the location as well. Like if you look at from the UK to the UAE, Dubai, you've over 20 flights, direct flights a day to London. So it's accessibility, lifestyle, safety, tax reasons. So it's a combination of reasons, really. And we're seeing, obviously, quite a lot of high net worth individuals coming from the UK, but not only the UK. We're seeing from Asia, Singapore, over the last 12 months, the US as well, a lot of European countries, South Africa. So yeah, it was, I suppose, 2 years ago, mainly from the UK, but that's changing slightly. And now it's more of a mix of individuals coming from all over the world.
Really interesting. And Navin, to your point in the introduction, your expansion east as well as looking to the traditional European source of clients, what's your observation on Hong Kong, other markets out in Asia driving demand for the UAE?
So I'll tell you, first of all, the people responsible for all of us having this, knowing this migration numbers is Henley and Partners. They keep publishing this report that 9,800 million has moved to Dubai. And when we go and deep dive, I would say the two main markets are UK and Hong Kong. And the reason they are moving, I think everybody's talking about tax, golden visa, reforms and everything. But being in Dubai for the last 18 years, I would say two of the most important aspects are what I have seen is safety, right? So I've traveled almost many countries in the world, in the Europe, UK, everywhere. In Dubai, when you come here, your children goes around in the night alone at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, comes back home from a party. That's called safety. People do not hesitate to do any such things in Dubai. The friendliness the government has here, you go and walk into which country in the world, you walk into a government office at 7 a.m. in the morning and they welcome you with a smile to give you a golden visa in the hand. Yeah, so that's another thing which I've noticed in Dubai. Of course, the infrastructure, the healthcare, the schooling and taxation does matter. And recently, what I have seen is that there are a lot of Chinese money which is coming to the UAE, not only as an investor into the banking account, they're buying properties, they're buying malls, they're buying hotels, they are investing into the malls and everything. Recently, we hosted a Chinese delegation of about 50 odd people who were part of a business school in China, who came to see UAE, and all of them are getting a golden visa. 90% of them are opening a bank account here in the UAE. And what people are looking into that, okay, as a part of diversification of their money, which is there in the European banks or in Hong Kong-based bank or the UK bank, UAE onshore banking is becoming a very hot property right now. People are looking into having money in the UAE onshore, primarily because UAE out of the grey list, there is no taxation, the Sharia law doesn't apply anymore. Earlier, there used to be a hesitation because Sharia law is applying in Dubai. Now, for the expats, there is no hesitation of Sharia law. So those are the factors which have made UAE as a very positive thing. And all the banks, including Mashreq and many of the banks and David Smiley and all of the external asset managers and asset management company, all of us are working with these clients who are moving to the UAE, not only to provide them a banking account, that's just a part of it, to provide them wholesome solutions. Do they want to buy a property? We connect them to a property advisor. Are they looking for a school? We connect them with an education counselor. Are they looking for anything else? We kind of give them a wholesale solution. And being Mashreq, we are not only a private bank, we have a corporate banking, we have a business banking, we have our own treasury. Somebody is coming, setting up a trust, foundation, company here, we help them with those things. Recently, we hosted a kind of a roundtable with the family offices in Dubai. Mashreq is a strategic partner with DIFC. So we hosted about 15-20 family offices who are setting up new family office in DIFC. We are advising them on the strategies, on the tax structure, on wealth structuring, everything. So all of this combining together, I think we will see more and more influx just coming in, and there's no stoppage to it. I have to just keep growing my teams in the UK.
Great. Well, look, we'll come back for a deeper dive on the banking side in a
David,
moment.
can I just add to that as well, just on the question? I think another thing to add, what's so attractive about the UAE and Dubai is the entrepreneurial spirit and the can-do attitude, that things are possible, which, a lot of other countries around the world, it's going the opposite direction. So I think that is very attractive. And just onto Navin's point as well about the safety, which I mentioned, high net worth individuals don't stand out in the UAE and Dubai. So they're not a target. So this is very attractive to them as well. We've had clients say to us, oh, I can actually buy that Rolex I wanted now. So, it's that safety, I think is a huge element, not just for the children, but for them themselves, and not standing out and being a target.
It's an interesting point. I mean, aspiration is at the heart of it, isn't it? People are coming they know they've got to work hard to make it, but people are willing to do so, aren't they? There's a real energy to the environment that is perhaps missing in other parts, and you need to harness that, don't you, to make progress as a country. So no, that's interesting. We'll come back to all these points in a sec. But Amna, just on the education front, just at a high level, how has the education scene in Dubai evolved over years to accommodate this influx of high net worth and also skilled workers and people who are coming in a variety of roles to the country?
So I've been in the education space for now 13 years, and I must admit, when I joined, there were limited choices, there was limitations in terms of accommodations and special needs. We're seeing the UAE adapt. I think education is regulated, which is great because then they maintain, a standard and consistency. The fact that they're also constantly evolving and changing and taking in, Dubai now is there's a big drive to be inclusive for people of determination, and I think that is really taking them a step further. Also becoming a hub for tertiary education. We're seeing some great universities now set up in the UAE. So really, we're seeing some great changes coming in the near future as well. So really excited for what is in store for, families looking at the UAE as, to relocate.
Fantastic. We'll come back on some more detail.
I just want to add to what Amna has said. So I since I've been here for a long time and I have a large, huge friend circle. All my friends, kids who have grown up and who have been looking to go to universities outside UAE in past couple of years. So now my daughter, she's in grade 9. Now people start asking me, okay, what are you thinking? Where will your daughter go? Will she go to the UK, go to the US, Australia? And I have given the answer as recent as possible, saying that, okay, I do not know because I've seen so many universities coming to the UAE. If my daughter is eligible to go out after 3 to 4 years, possibly she would not go anywhere. I'll have everything in Dubai as a university as well. So that's the kind of conversation we've started having in now on this space.
So the local options are really starting to compete. No, super interesting.
Exactly.
So Marie, just looking at the visa position for people not familiar with this area, there's lots of options: golden visa, investor visa, employment visa. Just give us a sense of what's the landscape of options for relocators.
Yeah, I think from a high net worth perspective, some of the main options that we are seeing from our side. So it's definitely either the golden visa or the retirement visa, which are the self-sponsorship routes. So these are the most popular we're seeing for high net worths. The golden visa is a 10-year residency visa, and there are several categories under that 10-year visa. So, and the most common two for high net worths would be the fixed deposit option or the property option. Now, just to give a brief detail on each of those. So the fixed deposit option requires 2 million dirhams, which is approximately £400,000, to be put into a fixed deposit local bank account for a minimum of 2 years. You get a letter from the bank, which allows you then to apply for the visa. The property one is similar in regards to the investment amount. So it's 2 million dirhams, which is £400,000 in a property that or above. Once you purchase the property, then you can get the 10-year golden visa under the property. So just to note on that one with the property, your visa is linked to the property. So if you sell your property, you have to buy a new property and transfer it to within 30 days. So it is linked to that for the 10 years. So these are the two most popular options when it comes to golden visas. And then retirement visas, we're seeing actually becoming more and more popular. So the retirement visa is a 5-year visa. Eligibility, you have to be over 55. And then again, there are several categories. Well, there are 3 categories under the retirement visa. So you have your fixed deposit option, but that's a fixed deposit of 1 million dirhams in a local bank account for 3 years. So it's half the value basically of the golden visa. Then there's the property option, which is again very similar, but it's 1 million dirhams, so about £200,000, half the value of the golden visa. And then the third category under the retirement visa is the income category. So if you can prove that you have a monthly income of, in Dubai, 15,000 AED, which is around £3,000, or in Abu Dhabi, 20,000 AED, which is around £4,000, then you can apply for this visa. So these are the main ones that we're seeing, David. So they're self-sponsorship routes and the longer term options as well of your 10 or your 5 years.
And Navin, just to bring you in quickly, so does Mashreq then facilitate, if people go for a deposit-based visa, is this kind of business you're doing on a frequent basis?
Yes. So Golden Visa is one of our USP when we open a bank account for anybody who's moving to the UAE. So we commit that anybody who is moving to the UAE and trying to open a bank account at Mashreq, we nominate them for Golden Visa. So there are 2 options. One is that they do a fixed deposit, to give them a certificate, and they go out and get a Golden Visa themselves from any kind of a government center. Other option is that we have a direct tie with the government, wherein if you are opening a private banking / high net worth individual account with Mashreq Private Banking, and we know that they are a good net worth and they are relocating to Dubai along with their net worth, we nominate them for the Golden Visa without having the fixed deposit, based on their profile and based on their net worth, and government approves them in advance so that they can just walk into any of the government center and get their Golden Visa. So that's a part of a package what we offer while opening the bank account in private banking segment.
Okay, thank you. And Marie, I mean, what's the practicalities here of obtaining residence? What are the stages through which people go through on this journey from moving from outside the country?
Yeah, well, the first part, David, is definitely the advisory stage or the consultation stage, where it is to find out, you know, what the requirements are and then advising what the best routes are. So that would be the first stage. And then before they come, it would be the pre-preparation. That is the attestation of their documents, usually their birth certificates of the children, marriage certificate, educational certificates, and of the educational certificates, equalizing them or validating them with the UAE ministry here. So this is what needs to be done prior. Then when they arrive, they need to do a biometrics and medical test, every applicant for a visa. And you're looking at, depending on the type of visa, anything from 2 to 6 weeks to have everything finished. So, you know, as countries go on visa applications, the UAE is quite efficient. It is a very efficient and streamlined process.
Okay, interesting. And also you work with entrepreneurs where they need corporate governance. So someone who's going to come and be active in business, are you seeing a lot of entrepreneurs coming over and then needing corporate governance out of the UAE and making sure that there's lots of pitfalls there if they're not familiar with the territory, not being advised? How do you work with entrepreneurs on that side?
Exactly. And that's, you know, sometimes we have individuals will come at one of those visa routes, but then they'll decide to bring their business or set up a business or a structure in the UAE. So again, it's assessing what exactly their requirements are. And there are, you know, several options in the UAE. So it's really finding out their short and long-term goals and then finding out which the best option is for them, and then making sure they're obviously compliant on an ongoing basis.
And what about, Marie, on the property front? I mean, it's a hot property market, isn't it? And for people who've not actually maybe been on holiday to Dubai, but they've not lived there, how do they go about trying to find the right property for them to reside in?
Okay, yeah. Well, first off, I would say, you know, it's not a one size fits all. And definitely, you know, in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi, there is lots of variety depending on the lifestyles, and you know, even with Dubai itself, the various different communities and the significant difference between them. Look, we would always recommend that if they have kids, they would try to pick a home close to the school, or definitely choose the school first before their home. And especially in recent years and months with the increase in traffic here, there can be quite heavy commutes. So this is definitely a very important factor. And look, you know, when we're advising on schooling, you know, definitely, as I said, we would tell clients, you know, think about the schools, then the commute patterns, your community feel, your long-term plans before committing, especially for, you know, people coming for the first time. And a lot of our clients now look to buy properties, but we would always advise that they rent for the first year just to figure out what community they want to live in. There's a schooling workout. And then in year 2, they would be ready to buy their long-term property.
What's your sense of people choosing between Dubai and Abu Dhabi? I've recently known people. There's a lawyer that relocated from Jersey, and he went to live in Abu
It's
Dhabi because he thought with a family it's a bit more, the traffic is less, it's a bit more livable, it's calmer. How are you seeing
it's
people making the decision?
it's interesting you say that, because in the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen a big shift actually. Traditionally, they say, a year or 2 years ago, everybody was just any high net worth, it was Dubai. That was it, just Dubai, weren't looking at anywhere else. But now most conversations are looking at Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And they're looking at Abu Dhabi because, it's a little bit quieter, more community feel, doesn't have the craziness Dubai has, but there's still just 1 hour commute from Dubai. They feel from a real estate investment, it's a better investment. And, Abu Dhabi, ADIO, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, is doing a big push to bring in, a lot of businesses into Abu Dhabi, ADGM, you see a lot of investment companies, private equity companies, hedge funds. So there is a lot happening in Abu Dhabi, and it's becoming a lot more attractive to high net worths, and people actually moving there for jobs as well, because there's more activity in Abu Dhabi now.
Interesting. And just to bring in the other panelists, I mean, David, are you seeing like a shift in pattern around whether relocators come to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and an increasing momentum around the centre there, as Marie sort of outlined?
Yeah, it's been fascinating actually. I think we're all Dubai based. We've been here a long time. We love the city. You'll hear the same sort of complaints from us all, and a lot of that revolves around the traffic, the fact that it's the old places that used to be quiet now aren't, and it's quite busy and it's quite hectic. It's great for business, and we love the vibe of it, but there's certain elements of Abu Dhabi now. I think its stock certainly risen with what's been going on in Dubai over the last few years, and absolutely seen more interest from clients moving, looking to set up, especially those with young families. But interestingly, from our sort of introducer network, the lawyers, the trustees, the property advisors, I think there's an eye on the opportunity and the potential in Abu Dhabi compared to Dubai, just because it's slightly less saturated. Maybe the ADGM is a very sound and well regulated financial center as well, which is very attractive. So. Yeah, there's definitely been a big shift, and I'd echo Marie, in the last sort of 6 to 9 months, even more so.
And on the education options, like we're hearing the family-friendly Abu Dhabi sort of options. What's the education options like between the centres?
So I think Dubai is just a lot more mature. But having said that, Abu Dhabi is catching up really quickly. And to add to what Marie and David said earlier, we're also seeing a lot of the longer term families that have stayed here opting to move to Abu Dhabi because they want that quieter life that that Dubai used to offer before. Now it's this fast-paced city. I remember when I moved here 25 years ago, Dubai was a sleepy town. I moved from Mumbai, which was this fast-paced city, and now Dubai has pretty much caught up, if not superseded. But I think we see also a lot of families opting for moving to Abu Dhabi for that quieter life. But back to schooling, Abu Dhabi is catching up very quick. We're seeing some of the great big names. We have a whole, I'm going to say at least 10 great schools opening up over the next 12 months. And Abu Dhabi has some of them, which is great.
Fantastic. And Navin, on the property front, Mashreq lend for people, relocators coming in? Are they would provide a mortgage, or what kind of property financing options available on the banking side for relocators to think about?
Sure, I would add to that. So currently, as per the central bank regulations here, the property financing options available are only for the ready-to-move-in properties, right? So if somebody is coming here, they are looking for a new property, the property which is ready to move in, bank will finance you up to 70 to 80%, depending on the location of the property and who is the developer, right? But if it is under construction property, which is just the construction started, and if you go around Dubai, Abu Dhabi, anywhere, I think you would see the cranes everywhere the buildings are being constructed, because if about 400 to 500 people are moving every week to Dubai, which are millionaires, they need to create those many new houses. And those are being created. Dubai is getting ready for it. Abu Dhabi is getting ready for it. There are other Emirates who are getting ready for it. But Mashreq or any other bank, they do not do a property financing which is under construction until the 50% of the construction is done. And once the 50% of construction is done and the rest of the work is going on, it's kind of ready to hand over with a defined date, then the bank starts financing. But if you want to buy a property today, which you can move any day, bank provides up to 80% of financing, and it's very attractive rates. And it's like a 3-month IBOR plus 2%, 1.5%, 1%. These are very competitive rates, which you don't get in many of the markets in the world, I would say.
Thank you. And David, just to come for a bit of detail on the financial planning side, someone with substantial wealth coming into the UAE, often from the UK, for example, or elsewhere. But what are some of the considerations? Where do you start with the financial planning conversation around this kind of move?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we're big believers that when anyone has any change in circumstance, it's important to go back and revisit and review your financial plan, assuming you have one in the first place, which of course hopefully you do. And so I think with a relocation, that's a big move, that's a sizable event in your life. So it's even more important that you revisit the plan that you had in place. I think for families, especially those with substantial wealth, often it's less about going straight for changing the investments in the first instance. I actually that's almost secondary to, I think, reviewing potential changes that may be needed to things like ownership, to governance, reviewing structures you've got in place, trusts, holding companies, jurisdictions that you're holding your banking in, how assets are consolidated and reported, ensuring that everything that you've set up pre-relocation can still operate in the same way and as efficiently as it had done, post-relocation. So that's really, really important. And look, I might give you a quick example. I mean, I'm an ex, private banker, having worked in banks, like Nav in a lot of my life. And one of the things we see, a lot of is, how current, banking and custody arrangements can change depending on changes in residence of individuals who own the accounts or are linked to the accounts. And I think we are in an increasingly mobile world. Banks are becoming more adaptive to changes in residency. But look, there still remains a lot of banks, especially when it comes to the UK, who simply will turn around and say, look, we don't look after UAE residents anymore. And what that means is if you're a high net worth family, you've got significant wealth with that bank, and suddenly you turn around and say, look, oh, I didn't realize one of the directors of one of those companies has moved, or the settler of a trust, or whoever may be that is perhaps linked to those accounts or the structures that are banked at that bank. That's going to cause you a headache, and you may have to start restructuring stuff, and that can sometimes be a large exercise to undertake. So it's less about going straight to the investment strategy itself. It's more about how does the change in potential residency of those involved in the family impact the wider operation and governance of the asset base.
And I suppose it's about looking at as well the cost of lifestyle in Dubai, because tax might not be such a big consideration, but it's an expensive place to be, isn't it? And I suppose it's reminding those who are new arrivals about all the potential costs that are there and planning for that. So they might, how does that conversation kind of come into play, just to highlight some of these things that they may not be aware of?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it can be. I think one of the things we all see is people that get, lulled into that false sense of security that they're going to be coming to the UAE, they're going to be, earning all this tax-free money, and actually what they find is it can be quite expensive to relocate, and setup costs can be high. And actually, if you live life in a certain way here, then it can be much more expensive than where you've come from, and often that saving that you're making on the tax side can often get eaten up. So look, again, it's about planning, it's about financial management, it's about budgeting, it's about discipline. If your goal and objective is to save, look, your goal and objective might be to come here and spend every penny that you have and have a great time. And I think that's why it's so. The plans that we sit down and put in place for clients are so different. No plans are the same, because what the clients want to achieve by that relocation, they often differ from client to client and family to family.
And clients coming in might often come with UK-based type wrappers like their pension, ISA, insurance bonds, things like that. So I guess in addition to reviewing the investment strategy and going carefully on that, you're also looking at what they have where, is it, and then working out whether they still need such wrappers or what opportunities there are stemming from that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good question. I think, I think you don't, going back to the previous question as well. I mean, I think just because you've moved, you don't automatically have to change your investment strategy. But what a relocation does require is a rethink of, how that structure is operating and how that plan is working for you. And you made a really good point there. Once you become a UK non-resident, certain tax wrappers and solutions that you had access to before you don't have access to anymore. And if those make up a big part of your investment strategy, then you have to make changes. I think as well, there are certain things that will come into play when it comes to forming your investment strategy that you maybe didn't think about before. Currency is often one that gets neglected until it becomes important, and it can play a big role in it. The UAE is predominantly a dollar-based country because of its peg to the dirham. If you're coming from the UK, you might have a very domestically focused sterling strategy, and again, that needs to be addressed and potentially diversified. So, look, there's lots of things to think about. I think the key thing is you don't need to have a sort of full-scale tear up of the investment strategy. That's not needed. I think what you want to do is revise that strategy to make it more tailored and more suitable for your new international life.
And once people settle in, particularly entrepreneurs, if they're making money while in the UAE, do you see people then trying to put a nest egg away because ultimately they may well go back to the UK or elsewhere in retirement? Or how do you see people once they've set themselves up essentially in the UAE, they're making good money in their business, is like providing for a nest egg for the future? I guess that must be a strong motivator for people looking at the longer term.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you've got to be more structured and disciplined in the way that you save for retirement here in the absence of a sort of more structured sort of pension regime. So yeah, I use discipline a lot because I think it can be very easy to spend money here. And I think you need that discipline in terms of your investment approach to ensure that you're really making the most out of your time that you have here. And I also think we all agree this as expats and as sort of visitors to this country. And COVID was a good reminder of this. You don't really know, what happens next and where you might move to next or be forced to move to next. So I think having that nest egg, having that strategy in place means that you can be much more adaptive and flexible to changes in circumstances from here somewhere else.
Thanks, David. And Navin, just to look at the banking side, I think historically people who don't know much about the UAE would say the local banking for residents can be difficult to get, particularly those relocating. So perhaps you could just set us straight on what's the banking landscape like, relocators coming in, opening bank accounts and things like that. Where are we at?
So I would say just to set the context in the one line, saying that the UAE banking landscape has evolved a lot. Yeah, and if I look at the regulation of banking, the central bank regulation here is quite similar to UK banking regulation. Number one, number two, there are any bank, or if I talk in particular about Mushrek, there are different tiers of banking account. So let's say if I talk about the neo banking or a mass banking account, anybody who comes and open the first bank in the UAE, you can open as today a bank account in as less than a minute. Whether there's a Mushrek bank, there's a Vio bank, there are a couple of other banks. The moment you have a UAE Emirates ID or the visa, you can open a banking account in less than a minute just through an app. And you have an account number, you have a virtual debit card, you get a debit card physical next day, and you can start using it. So it is as easy as it can be. That's number one. The moment you look at a little wealthy individuals or a mass affluent or a private banking clientele, where the banking regulation asks you for some more information than just an Emirates ID. We ask you for the address proof, we ask you for the source of wealth, source of funds. But if I compare UAE banking, even a private banking or a priority banking account compared to a couple of other markets, which is Singapore or UK for that matter, some of the banks or some of the markets can take up to 3 months to open a high net worth individual accounts, where in UAE, I would say the max a month, right? For as complicated as the account can be, even if you have a trust structure, a foundation structure, a family office structure, a layered structure, we can open it in month's time. But a simple banking account can be opened in less than a minute in the UAE today, which was not there 3 years ago. So the banking landscape has evolved a lot.
Thank you. And you mentioned the family office space there, and the IFC has accommodated for and really attracted new entities. What are you seeing in terms how that space is developing and becoming more sophisticated, and more services are available, aren't they, domestically in the UAE to these clients?
So between DIFC and ADGM, I would say there in last 1.5 years, there are about 600 new family offices they have been registered in the past, and 90% of these are from UK and Europe, right? And few from China side. And what's the reason? The reason being is that DIFC and ADGM both are, I would not say tax-free zones, they are having a tax holiday, right? So even in the UAE, the individuals are not subject to any taxation, but the companies are. So if you're a UAE mainland registered company, you pay about 9% tax, 10% taxation to the UAE government. But if you're registering your company in DIFC or ADGM, which means your place of management is either DIFC or ADGM, you do not pay any tax. Up to 50 years of tax holiday they have got. I think that's the main attraction for DIFC and ADGM, number one. Number two, the ease of setting up a family office or a foundation is you go walk in with your documents, there are 5 people sitting with you from the government side and helping you to open that. Not only setting up a foundation. So today, anybody setting up a family office in DIFC or a foundation, they have a tie-up with banks like Mashreq, Emirates and BD, and while they have put all the documents of incorporation, certificate in incorporation, MOU, AU, everything in the DIFC systems, they have a blockchain connected to Mashreq Bank. They transfer the data to us with the client consent, saying that, hey, do you want to open a bank account together while you're setting up a foundation or a family office? Client says yes. In parallel, we start opening their bank account. So the DIFC has evolved a lot. While they're setting up the family office, they're getting the client a banking account open in the name of the family office in a bank in the UAE, with no additional documentation required from the client, along with the blockchain technology. So things have evolved. It's every day. It's only improving, I would say.
Marie, on the family office and sort of sophisticated client, have you noticed these similar trends in the corporate setups that you're doing, or how are you seeing DIFC and other centers developing?
Yeah, definitely DIFC and ADGM, the family offices, foundations and SPVs in ADGM becoming very popular. And I think the UAE now, and especially jurisdictions like DIFC and ADGM, have a solid foundation and a trust factor where people are actually, trusting these jurisdictions and these structures. So yeah, definitely, a lot more positive and seeing a lot more people interested in and understanding as well foundations and the principles of them.
And are you also seeing, Marie, I mean, just more the professional advice scene in Dubai just maturing, so people ready access to lawyers, tax advisors, the banking services. How have you seen that develop over the time you've been working? People not needing to go out to get services.
Yeah, it's definitely improved. Well, over the 18 years I've been here dramatically, and I think the last few years as well, we're seeing a lot of players come in from different markets, particularly from the UK, which is helping, I think, clean up the whole environment and have a different quality and a better quality of suppliers and advisors.
Thank you. And Navin, on the cross-border front, you came to London last year to our event because you're engaging more with advisors on that side. I mean, we mentioned to David about people building nest eggs who are earning well in the UAE. Tell us a little bit about how you help people invest overseas in real estate and other assets if they're as part of a portfolios they might be building up.
So Mashreq, even though being a local bank, our investment strategies are not local, right? We deal in the global market, whether the clients want to invest in the bonds, funds, structures, or alternative strategies, or everything. We work in the US market, the China market, all the markets. And we do not have an offshore booking center, though. The booking center is only in the UAE, but our custodians are in Europe. Right, so the client can invest through Mashreq in any market, international equities, international bonds, and all the kind of products. We do not promote per se any separate product or solutions because all the products are available online now today. Our advisors will go to the client, sit with them, say, okay, show me, okay, what's the total investment size you're looking for? Now, how much of that you want to invest in the local properties? How much of that you want to invest in the UK properties, for example? How much that you want to invest in the global funds and structures and alternative strategies? And our advisors sit with the client, work on a plan with them, and say, okay, you should allocate this much to this particular fund, this much to the equity, this much to the structures, everything. Advisors do that for sure. And I would come back to this question again. Before that, I would want to answer the question which you asked Marie, for example, about the lawyers and everything. So in my last visit to London, I had met at least, I would say, 5 or 6 law firms and some tax consultants, while my role of acquiring clients who are coming to them to relocate to Dubai. And you will not believe, within the last 6 months, if not all, 90% of those law firms and tax consultants who were not present in the UAE, they have opened their offices in the UAE. But they have looked at UAE as their prime market today. So, I mean, that's the shift. I have seen that all these firms are opening in the UAE now, saying that, okay, sitting in the UK, I don't get to know the capture of all the clients, but let me open my office in the UAE because everybody is moving to the UAE. So that's what I have seen. And coming back to the question to me, which was on the advisory side, yes, we do provide clients advisory to all the kind of asset allocations in all different markets, not only in the US, but US, Europe, UK, Asia, all different kind of funds in the markets.
Thank you. And Amna, just to come to you for a deep dive on the education front, it'd be great to hear a high-level overview of the education options at different levels, both in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. For those looking at either center, if you could kind of sketch that out for us, that would be helpful.
Well, I think, families now that are moving globally, I mean, we see schooling being such an, the choice of schooling being such an important factor determining the move. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I think families are spoiled for choice with curriculum. I think we can offer pretty much any curriculum to a family that's relocating, which is fantastic. I think what really differentiates our education system is the regulation. We have the ministry is having a very strong hold on what's going on the ground and how the families are supported by the schools. There's inspections, there's accountability, there's transparency, and they're making sure to enforce that quite strongly. I think that gives the families a lot of reassurance in terms of the quality of education that they are getting. In terms of, I think there's a myth when families move here in terms of a school that's expensive, delivering the best quality of education. Sometimes, expense or the price tag that is attached to a school is linked to more the facilities, the location, the branding. We're seeing some big brands of, global schools coming into the UAE. So I think with families, I think it's important for them to know that price points don't really determine the quality of education, and it's important to see alignment with the approach of the school. I think also another big point that I suggest families look at when they're looking at schooling in this part of the world is the options that are available. From the traditional brick and mortar schools, we now have online schools. We have lots of homeschooling options also available, and I think that's important for families to know. Really, in terms of availability, there's a lot available, but I think making that right choice is important.
Because for all the children just trying to finish courses, perhaps the homeschooled remote might be enough, or what they need to get them over the line with the exams. Or it's interesting, that remote option, isn't it? It really changes the picture a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely, I think it gives families flexibility, especially when their needs involved. We've worked with families that come in with a competitive athlete that needs a certain amount of hours of training in a day. So I don't only mean accommodations. I also mean, a gifted and talented, or someone who's got this ability that they need to spend hours working on. So I think that kind of gives these families. We worked with a family coming in from India with a swimmer that was competing competing at the national level. And he needed to be at a school that gave him the flexibility of leaving early, coming in late because of his training routine. So, we found him a school that allowed that. And I think that is fantastic that you have those options available now.
In terms of the timing, I mean, is it a September start? Is there January entry as well? Like when people are moving, they might be not fitting in exactly with the school year. So how does that work?
So admissions are rolling. We've seen
Yeah.
families join midterm, mid-year,
Yeah.
literally July. Obviously, we have the holidays in July and August, but we've seen families come in May and, start school and finish 2 months and then start into the new year. So pretty much schools here are happy to take in a child any time of the year as long as they have space available, which will probably be something we can discuss at next, is the availability and the challenges around that.
And if people are, say, based in the UK, do they come and do some research, like go and visit some schools, like in a trip, a fact find kind of trip? How does a typical search kind of take place where people are coming mid long haul to come into Dubai?
So we usually recommend families start their school search at least 9 months prior to their relocation, but not everyone has that luxury. We have families, we have one that's currently moving, halfway around the world from the US in 2 months. So some don't really have the luxury of visiting, but we always encourage that families, start the school search earlier. That way they're not compromising on choice. You're making an informed decision, what's available. You don't just take what's left and what's there. Typically, we see families now actually start pre-decision. So they, before they've even signed the contract with the company, they've started the school search because that's such an important piece of the move. So they come in, they'd make the look and see trip, they'd visit some of the schools. We usually have a call with them before, just so that we line up a list of schools that work with the needs, that cater around the needs of the child, that fit the family's needs, the trajectory for the child. So that's the typical, we hope that we achieve that before they finalize the school. There are assessments involved. Some schools require in-person assessments. Schools are now being more flexible, but sometimes we really see schools being, the competitive schools that require assessments to be taken in person. But we're seeing schools being more flexible and allowing for assessments to be done remote as well.
And what are the kind of cultural options in terms of, like, I suppose the international, like US, American, English kind of like stream, if you like, French, Spanish, German? What are the sort of, what are the options, or what's the boundaries of that?
So in terms of, I'm going to speak about Dubai in particular now. In terms of Dubai, we see a large chunk of British curriculum schools. There are a limited number of American and IB schools that are top quality as well. But we're seeing families quite flexible today. I'm seeing American families come in and say, hey, I don't want to be in a school where my child, I'd rather have them exposed to this, 60 different nationalities, and I'm happy to send them to a British school. Or we also see British families choosing an IB or an American curriculum because that's where they see their children thrive. Not every not every child is built for an examination system where they're giving GCSEs or A levels. So I think having that flexibility also is pretty attractive to families moving in.
And Marie, I mean, your perspective on how integral getting the education options are right for a relocation. Have you seen moves kind of fall over because they can't find the right school option, or what's your perspective?
Yeah, interesting question. And I would say, David, on that, more so 5-10 years ago, we saw a lot of moves didn't go ahead because of the schooling, but that has changed. I think with the, I suppose, higher level of schooling available now and more options in the UAE, we rarely see actually, people not coming because they can't get a school, because they may not get one of, so they're, their top 3 schools, they may not get their top choice, but they might get their third choice. But an odd time it happens, but not as much. But definitely, yeah, in the past it did happen a lot, but the environment is much more mature now. There are far more options available, and very high level options.
Yeah, and to add to what Marie said, even special education needs, Marie, I'm sure you've seen
That's
that
changed
also evolve over the years.
dramatically. Yeah.
Schools are more inclusive, they have great teams in place. Of course, each of them differ in what is available and the degree to which they can support a child. But we now are seeing school in schools. We're seeing, a special needs school that is part of a mainstream school, which is great, which is also a fantastic option for families.
David, can I just jump in as well? Just because I'm an external, onlooker to the education piece. But, I think when I first came here, and I was looking after, expat clients, for example, Brits. One of the main reasons, families were gearing up to leave was because of the schooling, because, perhaps the quality of the standards of especially secondary schooling wasn't as high as perhaps back in the UK. And that would often be going back to the push and the pull, that would be a push factor away from here. And I think we often talk about the migration of wealth into the country, but what we don't often focus on is what's keeping people here. And I think one of the big changes that I've seen in the last 10 years has been the investment into schooling, into infrastructure, into curriculum, into teaching, which has meant that when people get to that phase where perhaps previously they would have said, look, we're going to go home and leave the region. The schooling is now of a standard and a caliber where they don't go. It's another reason to stay. And that's been a really interesting move, and that's of course contributed to this place continuing to fill up, because not only are more people coming, but more people are staying as well. And I think education has been a massive part of that.
Thank you.
No, and can I just? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I just add to that as well, just on the landscape and the change in the environment here from when I came 18 years ago, just to add to that, Dubai was very transient. Most people were coming 1-2 years, make some money, leave. But people coming now are coming for long-term, 5, 10, 20 years, and people here are staying, and it's because of education, because of everything, all the improvements, that it's far more attractive now, and definitely not as transient as it was. And even from a property perspective, we're seeing a lot of people now are buying properties. That didn't happen 15, 18 years ago. People were buying for investment, but they weren't buying to live in. But now people are buying, homes here to live in and make it long term.
Well, there were fewer options to stay as well, weren't there, Marie? On the visa front, you've opened out
exactly
modernized the visas. Sorry, Anya.
We have 10 of the top 100 schools in the UAE. I mean, which, to think that we have a smaller population comparatively. So to have 10 of them here is pretty remarkable. And I think that attracts also some fantastic leadership from around the world, senior school educationists. And so the quality of education is really remarkable now.
Great. Well, we're coming into the end of our hour. There is still time to pop a question in the chat if you need to. I've got a few questions quick fire questions that I'm going to ask our panel in any case. Marie, obviously corporation tax did come into the UAE 2023. Yeah. Everyone hasn't run for the hills. They're still going.
No,
how's that had an impact?
To be honest, I think nobody ran for the hills, and we didn't lose anyone because of it. And it probably made the UAE more attractive because it obviously was more compliant now and kind of set the scene better from a global perspective. So definitely, in my perspective and what we saw, it was a positive thing and not a negative thing.
Yeah. And on the banking front, for David and Navin, if someone's got their banking kind of infrastructure in the UK, they make the move over. At what point can they still access what they've got in the UK? What drives that, and how over what time scale are they replicating their services required in the UAE? There's a lot to do on a move. To what extent do they prioritize that?
So definitely, I would answer that. So if you're moving from the UK to the UAE and you're opening a banking account in the UAE, you of course become a resident for UAE if you're staying here for 6 months and above and you're taking a golden visa for sure. But you can always maintain your bank account of the UK. But yeah, you have to convert it from the resident to a non-resident account after a certain time, and you can access everything today. So you don't need to necessarily close down your banking relationships in the UK or anything. You can maintain both from here. And not only that, I would also add on that UAE banks also open for the individuals or companies who are based in the UK. So today, if you ask me, do we have clients who are based in the UK? Answer is yes. We have accounts for the people who are staying in the UK For us, they are a non-resident, but they can access all the banking facilities from the UK that they are doing today, and vice versa. So both are available.
Okay, thank you. And David, what's
Yeah.
your perspective on shifting your financial infrastructure?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess it very much comes down to the individual. I think often you know, clients will be forced to close banking relationships overseas. It's great that the UAE banks like Mashreq don't have any issue with you holding another account, but it may be that as I said earlier, that the UK account maybe you know, doesn't like the fact that you're a UAE resident. So you know, it's one thing that we spend a lot of time with clients on is having to restructure or rehouse assets in more favorable jurisdictions if we need to. And actually, we as a firm work very closely with Mashreq for clients looking to house you know, assets onshore in the UAE and get access to their great platform here. But for clients who maybe, you know, want to or need to shift assets to other jurisdictions, Switzerland, Channel Islands, Singapore, you know, other offshore booking centers where it might just be more appropriate to house those assets as an international resident, you know, we can help them with those, you know, those bank account setups and management of those more internationally focused assets.
Fantastic. We're just
So
going to
just
come.
to add on that, David. So one is what is regulatory allowed, and other is what is the trend. So regulatorily, of course, you have got everything allowed, but a trend, what I have seen and what same David Samail has also seen, is that when people are relocating from the UK or Europe to Dubai, they are typically shifting their financial assets from those jurisdictions to the UAE or to a more favorable jurisdiction. That's exactly what David said. So that's a trend which we have
Thank
seen.
you. And just for coming to each of you for a closing thought, I mean, Amna, just coming to you first, what's your top tip for a relocator from the education field? What's the one piece of advice you think you would really try and communicate to those considering a move?
So I think the UAE is really building this fantastic global education ecosystem. I think it's just important to navigate it well. You know, that's my one piece of advice to anyone who's looking to move here.
Fantastic. Marie, what's your top tip for relocators?
I would say definitely get advice and preparation. Don't jump into things. Preparation, you know, speak to the right advisors, and yeah, it's come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, David, anything to add to that other than get prepared, get your advice, do your homework?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's funny. I was gonna say the exact same thing as Marie. I think seeking the right advice from advisors who understand not just the jurisdiction you've come from, but the one you're coming to is super important. I think unfortunately we still operate in a market where there are advisors who you know, sadly prey on naiveties of people coming here, you know, who aren't as familiar with the change in jurisdiction, and so you know, always use an advisor that's recommended to you, someone that's tried and tested, and someone who has experience of both jurisdictions that you're coming from and coming to. That's my absolute top tip.
Fantastic. Navin, last word from you.
Yeah,
What's your
thank
top
you.
tip?
No, I'll just break my thoughts into two parts. One is that if you're a simple individual just moving to the UAE, just move in. There are enough people to take care of you and your wealth in the UAE, right? But if you're somebody who is having a wealth all over the world or complicated or different structures, definitely take a financial advisory from the experts and then choose your bank wisely. That's very important. You can't do that after you move into the UAE. You have to do it in advance.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been a fascinating hour. And yeah, we look forward to sharing this conversation.